It is my pleasure to introduce our student host from the Hinckley Institute for Politics, Gabby Nieto. Gabby is a senior political science major who will further greet you on behalf of the Hinckley Institute and introduce our moderator. Gabby.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hinckley Institute Forum. The Hinckley Institute offers a lot for students, such as internships, courses, and classes. So thank you guys so much for being here. There's pizza in the hallway whenever you want some. But our moderator for today's panel is Malijah Garfield, inaugural director of the Black Culture Center here at the University of Utah. Malijah Garfield is tasked with directing and strategically planning the Black Culture Center as a model for the state. He brings expertise in the implementation, development, and evaluation of programs aimed at promoting awareness of the African dysphoria. The native of Rochester, New York, Malijah is an avid moviegoer, Marvel comic book enthusiast, and fan of hip-hop, neo-soul, and 80s R&B. According to him, the top 5 hip-hop artists are Nas, Tribe Called Quest, Common, Kanye West, and Rakim. Please welcome him with me.
So we have a lovely panel for you today. It's going to be quick. It's a little jam-packed hour here. We have 5 lovely panelists on which I'm going to introduce. And we're going to talk about some hip-hop today. Is that okay? All right, all right. So first that I have here on the panel, we have Dr. Teresa Martinez. She's currently an associate professor of sociology at the University of Utah. Her teaching and research deal with issues of race, class, and gender, deviant behavior, juvenile delinquency, and popular culture. Professor Martinez has won several teaching awards, including the Calvin and Jalil Hatch Prize in Teaching, the highest teaching honor in the University of Utah. In the community, Professor Martinez has won the 1994 YWCA Leadership Award for Education, the 2005 Utah Coalition of De La Raza Personal Achievement and Community Service Award, the 2006 Renaissance Woman Award, and the 2010 Cesar Chavez Peace and Justice Award. She has appeared in the Time magazine, the Miami Herald, and the New York Times, as well as the National Public Radio and 2020 News Magazine. Could we give a round of applause? All right, our next panelist, and I'm sorry, raise your hand as we announced, is Mr. Luis Lopez, Associate Director of First Descent Scholars at the University of Utah. Luis is a hip-hop loving Chicano who currently serves as the Associate Director of First Descent Scholars with the David Eccles School of Business at the University of Utah. The First Descent Scholars Program cultivates, encourages, and enables academically focused students with significantly financial need to attend the Eccles School and connect with the University of Utah, local, and the global community, or are reaching their full academic potential. Could we give a round of applause? Next, we have Brother Ephraim Koum, Program Coordinator at the Black Cultural Center here at the University of Utah. Born in Ghana, Ephraim immigrated to the United States with his parents when he was 1 year old. From an early age, Ephraim discovered a passion for serving his community, which led to numerous opportunities, including experience with the Salt Lake City's Mayor's Office, the Salt Lake City's Council on Diversity Affairs, the NAACP, and the Utah State Legislature. He has served as our previous student body president of the U in 2020 and a program coordinator at the BCC. Ephraim is excited to continue working closely with his U of U and Salt Lake City community. He is currently a student at the U in the Masters of Public Administration program. Can we give a round of applause? Then we have Dr. Rachel Griffin, is an associate professor of race and communication and associate chair in the Department of Communication at the University of Utah. A critical and cultural scholar who has earned several awards. Her research interests span critical race theory, Black feminist thought, sexual violence, and the social institutions of sports, media, education, and the U.S. presidency. Dr. Griffin is currently the editor-in-elect of the Critical Studies in Media Communication, the discipline's foremost journal for critical media scholarship. She is published in journals including Women's Studies and Communications, the International Journal of Qualitative Studies and Education, the Howard Journal of Communications, the Journal of International and Intercultural Communication, the Departments in Critical Qualitative Research and Communication, Culture and Critique, in addition to being the co-editor of Adventures in Shondaland. All right. Identity Politics and the Power of Representation. Can we get a round of applause? All right, and our last but not least in the center, we have brother here, Mr. Keith McDonald. He was born in a small suburb of South Chicago, Chi-Town, yeah, called Blue Island. McDonald arrived in Utah after being stationed at Hill Air Force Base, working with kids, rather be mentoring, coaching, or teaching is McDonald's passion. McDonald's dream is to enact change in the urban areas of America by developing social and athletic programs, promoting education, and creating community solidarity activities to counteract the influence of gangs, drugs, and sedentary lifestyles. I would also say he is an ARCL. So, folks, can we give a round of applause? I'm sorry. A lovely round of applause. A lovely round of applause. Thank you. So what we're gonna do, I have a couple questions for y'all. I have some controversial questions for. But great ones, yes.
Yes.
But I want to begin this conversation. Of course, hip hop has kind of been around since the 1970s. Since the 1970s. It has gone through 50 years of evolution, a number of spanning into other genres of music, had numerous Grammy Awards, have numerous people. We have a couple billionaires now that are hip hop artists. A number of things have kind of happened in the hip hop culture. And so, beginning with you all, I just want to ask, what was your journey in exploring hip hop as a genre? Who would like to take it?
Give us a time limit. I'm really
Time
serious.
limit. I would say if you can tell me in about 30 seconds to a minute. Just tell me.
17 questions is a lot.
Just tell, I would say, 30 seconds to a minute. Just
Okay.
what was your journey to exploring the genre of hip hop? Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. Okay. So I was very much alive and in my 20s when Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five came out with the message. I was so impressed with this new sound. It reminded me of the Last Poets from the 1970s and Gil Scott-Heron, who were like proto-hip hop artists. And these artists actually the message just blew my mind. I mean, Sugar Hill Gang was fun, but the message was fabulous. And it was so social justice, and I loved it. And so my first hip hop article that I published was in the mid-90s, and it was about Public Enemy and NWA and Ice-T, and I really wanted people to understand in my discipline of sociology how important this genre was. And it was really about the 1992 riots, and I wanted to explain that this music was really a herald of those riots. Anyway, that's part of my journey.
Anybody else?
You know you have a lot to say.
Check. Hello. Yes. Can you hear me?
You can use this.
We can.
Okay. So I think it's very important when talking about hip hop as a genre that you reflect on its component to the culture as a whole. So hip hop is not only rap music, it's also breaking, it's also graffiti art, it's also DJing, and it's also knowledge of the culture. I was introduced to hip hop through my cousin Corey. She would record this radio show called The Top 8 at 8 in Chicago, and it would be PDP, Big Daddy Kane, MC Lyte, and she would tape it, and then she would stop it bar for bar, write it down in this excellent handwriting, and we would perform these songs in the kitchen for our family. So that was my introduction to hip hop, was through my older cousins and siblings.
Cool. So cool.
Anybody else?
I can go. So for me, I was born in '98, and I was born in a different country and continent, and so I really kind of had to find my own path as far as exploring hip hop goes. Growing up, radio and CD were huge avenues for me. That's how we would hear all the different hits. I still remember, I don't know how, but we had Graduation by Kanye West on a CD. I don't know where we got it from. Mind you, my mom, born, raised, lived most of her life in Ghana. So I don't know how we got it. But one thing about my mom was she loved music, or loves music just as much as I do, even if we liked different genres. I remember every Saturday morning watching a VH1 music video countdown. I was in middle school during like the Young Money era, the Maybach music era. And I was entering high school, or I think I maybe was in high school when streaming became a big thing. Apple Music came out like during the middle of my high school tenure. And that just like opened the floodgates for me. And so like, and that as well as SoundCloud, just all these different artists at the time, J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, Chance the Rapper, Lil Uzi, Lil Yachty, Travis Scott. And then also my geography being in the suburbs of Atlanta, like that was really big. We used to listen to like Migos on Spinrilla because you couldn't really get it anywhere else. But you know, my journey has like continued to evolve. Like I listened to like a lot of underground and up and coming rap artists who are like bending different genres and things like that, like new jazz, rage. It's been really cool to have lived during the time period that I have and to see like rap and hip hop change and expand so much.
Okay, cool.
I could jump on it. So I was born in '88. Right.
I was born in '80.
There we go. So we got eras in here. That's good.
That's right.
For me, so I was raised in Santa Ana, California, West Coast. Growing up, of course, gangster rap, G-Funk, full effect. I hear it everywhere. My cousins are into it. I still remember I was pretty young, and my older cousins were listening to Tupac, Can't See Me, and this old busted Honda Civic. And I felt like I was a shit in that car. I was like, I'm not gonna tell my parents you're playing it, but yeah, this is dope, right? But I didn't fully grasp it at the time. I was actually really into oldies. So the Temptations were my crew. Stax Record, Otis Redding.
That was my house.
So as I'm in high school listening to this kind of stuff, right? And I'm about 15, and two of my uncles, my Uncle Armando and my Uncle Mario, said, you need to check out Eric B. and Rakim Paid in Full.
Oh my.
And I need to listen to Slick Rick.
Yeah.
Game changer.
Totally.
Rakim's style, everything, it was so smooth. The samples coming in.
God.
I was like, this is crazy, right? And then Slick Rick, I mean, the boy Slick, right? Smooth storytelling, visualizing it. So I got to the internet, right? And then we fast forward, right? This is, we got computers now at my house. I find this guy called KRS-One.
Oh.
And I find a record called The Bridge Is Over.
Yes.
That's it. I get into this wormhole, and I've been hooked ever since. And that got me into, again, I'll be at the store, I recognize a sample. I would dabble into beats. I would dabble into freestyling. Allegedly, I was writing throughout the city at night. Who knows? That's what they say. I don't know. But really like giving into all elements of hip hop, expression, slang, clothes, sneakers. I mean, I just went all in because I felt like I was finally seen and part of something.
Nice.
I was like, that's why Rakim is one of my
Exactly.
Rakim,
Yes.
we're not talking ASAP Rocky Rakim.
We're talking about Rick
the
Rakim.
Rakim.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you like to say?
I don't get to answer every question, right?
Yeah, you don't.
Then I'm not going to answer this one.
Okay, all right. Thank you all for answering that particular question. I would say all of our journeys have been different at different points.
Totally.
Myself, I was born in '93, and so a lot of what I've grown up with, even though I was young, grew up with Brand Nubian and Tribe Called Quest
Yes.
and a number of other different items.
Just
Just artists that were really kind of uplifting. One of my favorite is actually Wu-Tang Clan.
yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Like Wu-Tang forever.
Mhm.
But definitely something. So I agree. Thank you.
Well, that's like before we had Wakanda Forever. We have Wu-Tang. You know what I mean? Like,
Am I right?
Nice.
Am I right?
Nice.
Yes, we have Wu-Tang.
Right.
Yes.
Lord.
So with this, and understanding this journey that you all have kind of been on with hip hop as a genre, how has hip hop contributed to the discussions of race, identity, and social justice? Has there been any moments that for you that kind of really spoke to that, as far as in the genre that spoke to those different things? And I'll pick about 3 individuals in the same, if anybody wants to answer.
I mean, it's not that hip hop is not separate from counterculture and activism and protest. Hip hop is counteractivism and protest. And I would argue that when we have musical artists who get read into or read themselves into the genre of hip hop, but their lyrics, their presence, their art, their contribution, when it doesn't address power dynamics and protest and resistance, it is not hip hop. Point blank, period. Like hip hop itself, a core element of the genre is resistance. And that's not to say that hip hop is perfect, right? Like we know that hip hop has made far more inroads in the realm of racial and racialized justice than it has in the context of, let's say, gender.
Yes.
Right, or sexual orientation or trans identity. But let me take that back. I actually think hip hop as a genre, it's made more inroads in the context of race and class, right? It is also an anti-poverty movement at its core. But I think that distinction is essential about the genre itself. I also think that because of that defining feature that regards power dynamics and struggle as essential, that every moment of hip hop can be pointed to is a moment or the moment that contributes to a shift in social consciousness, whether that's within an individual person who feels called up, whether that's within a community, whether that's within an institutional context. But I would argue that when hip hop is stripped, and oftentimes that is intentional, when hip hop is stripped of its counterculture critique of power dynamics, that in and of itself is a moment of appropriation, whether that happens with an artist, whether it happens through an audience, or whether it happens right down the road where the jazz play. That is an appropriation of hip hop culture because it negates a core element of the genre itself. And I'll stop there.
Anybody else? Speak to, I saw your hand.
For me, and I mean, kind of speaking in terms of, because like, yes, we can, there's been several points throughout history over the course of decades. I think for me, in terms of like more recent years, I think a lot, like if I had to point to like one album, I think about All American Badass by Joey Badass.
Jeez,
and the spelling of it is America with like 3 Ks instead of a C.
Yes.
That came out while I was an undergrad here at the U. And like I remember doing a project about it. It was just in terms of like recent albums that really focused on those power dynamics and those dynamics of struggle, race, politics. That was a defining moment for me. And then I also think about Kendrick Lamar. There's like a lot of his body of work that addresses those things, but I especially think about To Pimp a Butterfly and songs like All Right has become at least for like me and like my peers, like one of the anthems of like Black joy, I feel like. And I think about like the song titled I, and all the backlash that he got for that song because of how directly he addressed police brutality in that song. There's just so much, so many different points, but those were like a few like really defining points for me, just like with the time that I've been on Earth.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I kind of want to get to the question where we talk about how they're related, the past and present. But sorry.
No, take us
not,
there.
Do you want to
Answer
take
it.
us there?
Yeah.
Well, because
tell them the question though. They don't know the question.
It's the. Sorry.
No. The question is. Hold on. We can go to that question.
Early compared to contemporary 6.
Yeah.
But I think that we could also do. I mean, I didn't mean to usurp that. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, you can.
Well,
You just got to read the question so the audience knows it.
Yeah.
Well, you can completely see in the work of Tupac and Kendrick the same themes and the same really gutting things about marginalization. And what we're really talking about is that contemporary hip hop is reflecting on the same issues that came out in the 1990s and even the 1970s and 80s. So it's this litany of wrongs that the country is, responsible for. And all of us are responsible for, really. But when you look at very different tones, though, Tupac and Kendrick, much different to analyze. And just speaking of To Pimp a Butterfly, which is like an album I don't think you ever get over, that album. But just the whole notion that, they're both talking about genocide. They're really both talking about the destruction of Black communities and people of color, marginalization. Oh my gosh, everything from poor healthcare and education to not caring for children. Tupac's line, another ugly mouth on the welfare, is like this unbelievable line. It's like, we don't value children if they're not, white children. Just powerful words, and both of them reflecting on the gutting of communities and the deterioration of communities and the marginalization of communities, which is horrifying to think that those things are the same between two completely different generations.
Well, what you're saying, right, is that the past isn't the past.
No.
And that hip hop as a genre, it illuminates the lack of actual, tangible, structural change.
Yes.
And I'm gonna go there because I think it's important to do. Tupac's lyrics, Tupac, Eazy-E, you can trace it all the way back because at the core of early hip hop, there is an insistence on deconstructing structural power dynamics that isolate brown people in general, but Black people in particular, right? And so I'm telling you, Tupac Shakur's lyrics, he talks back to HB 261 because that is a bill about that is a bill about destructing Black and brown communities in the places that we gather, right? And so we can track the genre of hip hop in the past to this present moment where the past isn't the past. And what does that mean? And how sad is that?
Yes.
That Tupac Shakur can lecture the Utah State Legislature and be right.
Yes. Still.
Absolutely. I love it.
Totally.
And I really love the shift in social consciousness and what does it mean, but also comparing the past to the future and the present. Really the question I want to ask in kind of talking about that is often the challenge that we have in hip hop and as well as rap and the genre of music as a whole is that it has become mainstream.
Yes.
The majority of the population that actually listens to hip hop and rap music is actually
white.
White, cisgender, heterosexual U.S. American men.
Yes, absolutely.
Between the ages of, probably 18 to 34. 18 to 34. That's right. Yes. That's who buys it.
True.
And so with that, I would love to give to you the key. What, in this aspect of this mainstream of hip hop, how has it impacted the authenticity and the social impact that we were kind of talking about in this kind of social consciousness?
I'm thinking KRS-One. Rap is something you do, hip hop is something you live, right?
Preach.
So these industries have caught on that you can perform the act, you can promote stereotypes from urban communities, which is coded for Black and brown, right? And we can monetize this because there's a group of people fascinated by watching this group play out, and they want to be part of it. However, when it gets too real, Now I don't. So let me just watch it, let me buy it, let me consume it, let me emulate it, but not actually be it, right? And that's what we're experiencing right now, right? Pass it to Keith.
It reminds me, if you've seen this movie called Office Space, and there's a guy, he's singing Scarface in his car, and he's so into it, he loves it so much, and then a group of black kids come by and he kind of tenses up.
Yep.
I think there was a comment earlier that was made that talked about how hip hop faces the community in a social way, and then rap kind of faces the industry of music. I think that while technology has lowered or even the playing field, as it were, I think the cost of becoming a mainstream artist or the cost of entering this sort of culture as a recording artist has risen to the point that many people in the hip hop community can't, even after years of service to the community, can't participate in the same ways as other artists can. When we talk about KRS-One, there's a song, and I cannot find it on major streaming platforms at all. It's called "Human Education Against Lies." It's one of the I think one of the seminal pieces in hip hop consciousness, and then also by KRS-One, Self-Destruction. So if you wanted to look up those two songs, they kind of face towards the community and not towards the record sales aspect of making music.
I like that, facing towards the community and not the record sales.
Yeah.
Even though we understand that in order for this genre to prosper, we do need it to be, in some aspect, reach to the masses. To that message. What I would ask, as far as in that, has hip hop for you all, and we could take some others as well, has hip hop for you all really influenced other art forms? Oh, is it dying? I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? All right. Yeah, all right. So with that kind of understanding and understanding that, you know, having hip hop be more so towards an art form and not necessarily just for all themselves, has there been an influence for you all as far as in hip hop influencing other forms of art? Has there been other forms of art that has been impacted by hip hop as it has gone mainstream in a lot of instances? And what does it look like to you?
Can I answer the last question and this one at the same time? So I just want to make one connection around the consumption and the appropriation of hip hop, particularly amid person on the end. Remind me of your name. I'm so sorry. I just met you. Luis?
Luis.
Yeah. Luis. Particularly amid what Luis said about this idea that rap is a behavior and hip hop is a praxis, right? It's a way that you move through the world.
Yeah.
Bell Hooks has an essay called Eating the Other. And again, we hit this moment where the past is not the past, because Bell Hooks, Black feminist scholar, who recently passed away, I think in 2022. And one of the things Bell Hooks teaches us in that essay, and it's in a book where the first two words are called Black Looks. I think it's Black Looks, Media and Representation. But in that essay, she talks about how white people in particular, which is why it's relevant to the conversation we're having, they are willing to be exposed to Blackness, to experience Blackness, as long as they can do it on their terms. And so the consumption, the appropriation is on their terms. A whole bunch of white people sitting in a big old stadium watching sports, for example, with predominantly white players, but predominantly white ownership and management. Take, for example, the NBA, the NFL. A whole bunch of white fans can sit in that stadium and feel safe, sing along to hip hop, choosing whether or not to say the N-word when the N-word says, when they bleep it out, because they can partake on their terms. They can watch Blackness, they can experience Blackness, but really they're watching and experience Blackness in accordance with what the white imagination says Blackness is, right? And so it's not actually Blackness or Black culture, it's a representation of Black culture. But I want to say that in this particular cultural moment, that it's enormously important to understand that hip hop as a praxis, as a resistant praxis that insists upon drawing our attention to places where people need to tune in and understand fully what's at risk. You know, when I said that Tupac Shakur could give the Utah State Legislature a lecture through his lyricism about HB 261, I want to be clear that in that moment, I'm talking about a hip hop artist who was profoundly intellectual and profoundly emotional and who understood himself in that way, right? Like I would argue that Tupac Shakur is one of the early, if not the first, you might debate me on this, hip hop artists to position himself publicly as intellectual through his poetry and emotional, right? He refused to be confined to the positionality. Right. See, I'm being controversial. He refused to be restricted to the positionality of an angry Black man just spouting off, right? And so who was the first?
I would say there was.
He'd say Karis one.
You said Karis one.
No, he'd say Karis
One of my first.
I
for
think
sure.
Tupac.
All right.
What do you think, Keith?
Let's say
Chuck
Chuck D. Okay, Tupac wasn't the first.
That's really true.
But let me finish my thought.
That's really true.
Let me finish my thought because, like, the irony is, I'm just going to read it because I don't want to swear about it. I'll just read it. So Governor Cox signed HB 261 that destructed, right, aims to destruct of many, but definitely our Black Cultural Center on January 30th of this year. On February 1st, 2024, on X, he said, February is Black History Month, and we honor the resilience, courage, and contributions of African Americans have made to our state and nation. We celebrate Black communities and remain committed to improving access to opportunity. I can't even.
Unbelievable.
So I draw our attention to this moment because on February 1st, when I saw that tweet for the first time, it was in the evening, and I was sitting in Eccles. And if any of you were there, Black violin was playing. Yes. 2 Black men who have not created, but they are violin artists who perform hip hop.
Yes.
And that's an example of how hip hop has crossed over into other genres and brought new kinds of art. I mean, they are profoundly talented musicians. And I sat in Eccles. And I'm like, who are the people here at Eccles who have season tickets? And why do we welcome? And Black Violin, if you don't know, they've been to Salt Lake City several times. This is the third time I've seen them, I think. If you haven't gone, go. They're 2 Black artists, light-skinned Black male, dark-skinned Black male. Their performance is resistant. They are hip-hop violinists. Their music, when they do sing, their lyrics are critiques of power dynamics. They pay homage to elders and perform instrumentally old school hip hop songs. But I sit in Eccles just a couple of weeks ago and I think to myself, okay, so here we are. Here we are. And we have this convoluted moment where Salt Lake City at Eccles, and if you don't know anything about the Eccles family, look it up, right? We're willing to host Black artists. We're willing to sit in the audience and clap and dance. And we're willing to have Black people present, for example, on this campus. We don't want Black people to be entirely absent, but we also don't want them to be too present. We definitely don't want them in groups or to have power. And that is all, I'm saying that if you're wondering, like, why is this woman all over the map? It is all interconnected. It is all interconnected. If we live in a state that is willing to enforce what I regard as white supremacy, meaning making it harder for people of color to gather in groups, for people of color to have access to institutional power or budgets to host programs like this. That is a strategic effort to keep people of color in a space that white people are comfortable with. And this is where it gets hard with hip hop, right? Because white people are very comfortable with Black people and people of color in hip hop spaces, as long as they can pass through on their own terms. And as long as they're not too close. Like if they get too close, it's too dangerous. It's not safe anymore. Mm-hmm. So there's a way in which we're being confined. We are literally in this cultural moment being told where we can and cannot be. And that is something that is, I mean, I got a lot of words, but oppressive is one.
Yeah.
Dehumanizing is another.
Yes.
Right? But it's all interconnected. This isn't just a conversation about hip hop. This is a conversation about government. This is a conversation about political structures. And you better believe this is a conversation about money.
Absolutely. And I thank you.
So long.
No,
sorry.
this is great. Thank you. And I think it really also speaks to, again, as we're looking at hip hop again starting in the 1970s until now, understanding that things have been happening in circles. There's a number of different social movements. There's a number of different things. Black Lives Matter, yes, happened in the mid-2000s, but Black Lives Matter was also happening during the
slave rebellions,
the Rodney, the shooting, all the different things, police brutality, all these different things, and which was pivotal in the hip hop movement, and through the lyrics of various artists. And so we talk about the present, we talk about the past, but the question I would like you all to answer fairly quickly, if you can, is how do you see the future of hip hop evolving? And what potential impact might it have on future social movements? And kind of speaking to Dr. Griffin, as in Tupac mentioned, and it kind of talks about these things, and then we can take that into context with this bill that's going on. But where do you see hip hop evolving? And if we can answer, we could start with Luis and then go down very quickly.
I mean, I think for me, and it's actually something that I kind of use as I lead my life, especially working with students and in the community, is I honestly don't have that answer, right? But pulling from Tupac, I hope to spark that change and that answer in somebody else, right? I can take what I know about the past, how to navigate the present, ideas for the future, and my hope is that someone, a little homie comes along somewhere, catches that baton and keeps going.
Amen.
Right? In terms of hip hop, we're still young, right? If you really think about it compared to other genres, and we're in evolution, right? What happened to jazz, revolved into rock, revolved into hip hop, and we're seeing that kind of happening right now within hip hop. However, there are still some folks out there who represent the entire culture, right? Of course, we think of a Kendrick, for me, J. Cole. If we're talking mid-2000s, Wale, right? Some younger cats like JID, Earth Gang, they're doing some crazy stuff that I really love, right? And they're still staying true to it. So I think hip hop will continue to be the soundtrack to the resistance. It'll be the voice of those that haven't had a platform, as long as we still protect it and be mindful of what is coming authentically from the community and what is being curated, right? Like your favorite artists right now, do you like them because you like them or because the algorithm told you to? Right? So we're gonna see a lot of that misinformation everywhere, but that is hip hop, and I think hip hop is still alive, despite what Nas may think, right? What some of the older heads may think. We got some cats out there who are really pushing it, and even small, right? Within my community, right here in Salt Lake, when I go home to Santa Ana, with my own son, he's learning breaking right now. We freestyle in the car. He doesn't know that I'm passing this on. He just thinks, oh, we're doing word association. That's right, son. Now find a rhyme for orange. You'll impress me there, right? And we keep it, we keep it alive in those small ways, and hopefully those seeds will continue to grow.
I like it.
I've always believed that. I've always seen hip hop has this core. You said it, Rachel. It's a resistance movement. It's a movement. It's always been there. It's not going anywhere, and it will always be there. And yes, it'll be co-opted, and it'll be commercialized, and it'll even be distorted and perverted by some people. But there will always be this core of resilience and resistance that's been there from the beginning. I truly believe that. I also think we can see it. We can see it in the young artists. We can see it, by the way, in the queer artists. We can see it in women, and we haven't talked about queer folks and women, but there's a lot of great hip hop coming out of queer folks and women,
and indigenous communities.
Yes, and has been for a long, long time. So these are all things that are part of hip hop, and it's something that will never go away. Like I tell my students, when something's introduced, it never really goes away, especially something like hip hop that is this powerful.
And that's what we can see with the genre and the movement too, right? And some of its leaders, they fall short. They're imperfect. Totally. Right? Because, and we know that like the last question, number 17, is what are your top 5 hip hop artists? And for most of us up here, myself included, right? I'm complicit in this. The folks who come to mind as those who defined the genre and were at the turning points are typically Black men.
Yes.
That in and of itself signals that there are barriers within the genre of hip hop. And I struggle with that. I struggle with hip hop sexism. I struggle with its homophobia. I struggle with the way that, out of a desire to protect itself and where hip hop comes from, the Black community has erected politics of exclusion that do not sound that different from racism, right?
Yes.
That functionally don't work that different than racism. But that doesn't mean we negate the genre. That means that the genre and the people within it have to grow.
Yes.
And they have learning to do.
And they will.
And they can, if they choose to, right? We have the potential.
Just to branch off of that, I don't think hip hop will ever be perfect because people aren't perfect. So the
That's right.
byproduct of people will always be imperfect. I have Queen Latifah in my top 5. So
Totally.
Mhm.
Yes.
there's that. But
I have Mary J. Blige.
well, that
I know.
So to speak to the
I know.
question, to speak to the question, though, I think that a lot of gatekeeping did halt our progress in hip hop. I think a lot of things like this top 5 question or what is real and what is not real kind of held us back, and that, along with institutional forces that reinforce the caricature of what hip hop is in America, has kind of halted our progress. I would hope that newer artists that are emerging could break some of those barriers and kind of get away from those things. But I think it speaks to the power of hip hop as an epistemological force of knowledge making, right? Of what's cool, of what's acceptable in society, of what the future could be. And I think that's a very powerful component. I mean, we just had Metro Boomin do a whole soundtrack to a Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, or I thought you were about to talk about the orchestral a performance that he did.
An orchestral performance. I mean, you got Sly Fifth Ave and tons of Soul Supreme, tons of artists who are taking classical nodes and using that into hip hop today. So I think that the future is bright, but also that, old heads such as ourselves need to recognize the things that we did to kind of hinder that progress.
I don't know if you an old head.
No.
Right?
I don't think he needs to take responsibility.
Well, what about Missy Elliott then?
She's
Right?
so good. We're getting there. We're getting there.
So we're talking about like how hip hop will look in the future, kind of.
Like for you?
I think that one thing that I hope and something that I think that is already happening is the ability to exist in different spaces, like in terms of like genres, subgenres, and within that also like the ability to exist in different messages. Like, for example, like J. Cole isn't consciously rapping with every single second of every song that he makes, I mean, that can be said for quite a few artists. But like one artist that I think of, I think about when Lil Baby made The Bigger Picture in 2020. Lil Baby is an Atlanta trap artist, true and true. And like that's a genre or a subgenre that I listen to a lot. It's one of my favorites. But so I think it's easy to like put someone like him in a box and not expect him to, speak on societal issues. But he can, and he did. And like, there's different ways to do it too. A lot of like trap artists, I think that it's easy to like look down upon the content of their lyrics, but they are still talking about struggle, just maybe in a way that's different from how artists did in the past.
Tell folks what trap is in case they don't know. It's hard, but
I'm not sure how to fully. Like, are you talking about as the subgenre or?
Right, like how is trap is part of hip hop, but how is trap different than rap?
I think that I'd have to say it like comes down to like a content of lyrics. Like a lot of it consists of like pertaining to like drugs and that sort of hustle.
The negative stereotypes.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so there's like there are a lot of negative stereotypes that are associated with trap as a genre, or subgenre, but it still is speaking to struggle in a way. And then on top of that, there are still artists that are like, their focus is still like being conscious. Like I think about No Name, and I think about Red Veil. Like these are artists that are still very much resistant and like very much true to that. And so I think that in terms of the future, my hope and belief is that like there, as this industry expands, that there will just be opportunities for people to exist in different spaces and communicate messages in different ways, and that for that to still be okay and conducive. Because even if someone is rapping about stuff that you don't agree with, that is that's an example of maybe what you might not want to do. So those are things that come to mind.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I would speak to, as far as in the future and what you all kind of spoke to, again, is that hip hop as a genre kind of goes in cycles. It goes in circles. So you were talking about trap music, when trap music really is, the dawning of that was gangster rap. And what's the future of trap music is really drill music.
Yeah.
And so kind of understanding the different intersections of that and what does that look like. And that it constantly evolves, but the message is still there in that aspect. And so we have enough time for some open-ended questions, but I have one question I want to ask you before I open it up to the audience.
Oh, no.
And it's a part, I want to ask this question because it's a part of the culture. Now, you don't have to answer this particular question. You could say, what is your most influential artist if you like? But as far as in the culture, what's your top 5?
We can understand this is like
start with Louis.
evolving, right?
All time, like
Okay, so I would
lyrics,
say,
impact,
Like all time.
All
time. But
your
All day.
favorite. It's subjective.
Louise, with the understanding that the answers we give in this moment being recorded and publicly shared could change.
Yes, they could
That's
change.
right. That's
Because
right.
we are imperfect.
And they
as
can change
humans.
tomorrow.
Yes, they could change tomorrow. But what's your top 5?
What's your top 5 today?
I lost sleep over this, okay? My wife looking at me crazy. I had a list of like 30 different names, and what are you doing? I'm like, I'm working, okay? Today.
At this moment.
My top 5 of all time that have impacted me, which is why I'm making this choice.
Okay.
Starts with KRS-One.
All right, KRS-One.
Right, he's on my top 5. Controversial, but old Kanye.
Old Kanye?
Oh.
Yes.
Dark Twisted Fantasy and Back.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know if
We're
that's
talking
I
about
don't-
backpack rappers. Kanye West.
I'm talking,
Okay.
he's with Mos Def and Talib Kweli.
Yes,
Kanye.
yes.
absolutely.
That
New
Kanye.
Kanye has done too much
That
damage to
Kanye.
old Kanye.
Exactly. Yeah. So old Kanye.
Ooh.
Oh, God. This is tough. Relatively newer-ish, but the impact is crazy. Snow the Product.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
Thrown out there. Residente from Calle 13.
Ah,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
No order. You got to think I'm crazy probably because I'm not going to put newer guys out there. I'm going to put Wayne.
Lil Wayne.
Lil
All right,
Wayne
representing
Still
Louisiana.
tearing it up all these
Yeah.
years.
Wow.
Okay. There,
Lil
he
Wayne
has
still
his
tearing it
choice. Okay, so.
I mean, of all time.
The mix.
Okay,
Look at
okay,
longevity.
okay. Hey,
Look at longevity.
don't be
Lil
arguing.
Wayne has been doing it for
I want to
No
be
arguing,
clear.
no arguing.
I am
we gotta
judging.
continue. We gotta continue. Go ahead.
Okay, Tupac
I just
Shakur.
understood the pop.
Okay, Tupac.
Definitely Tupac Shakur.
Okay.
Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick Lamar. All right.
And then it changes. I mean, like Queen Latifah.
All right.
I really wanted some women on this. Snow the Product,
All right.
who is a queer Mexican American hip hop artist. Immortal Technique.
Ooh, that's a
Wow.
good pick. That's a good pick. Okay. Immortal Technique. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. Keith.
Keith.
This is so being on the radio and hosting hip hop events. This is a question that I get asked a lot. Chris Rock made a whole movie or documentary about top 5. I'm going to base my top 5 list on impact to the culture. So I have to say Chuck D. I would have to say who else? Okay, I'm gonna say Chuck D. I'm gonna say Rakim. I'm gonna say Big Daddy Kane. And I'm going to say Queen Latifah. And then let's see, one more. Who, as far as people influencing other artists and influencing hip hop culture, I'm gonna put Nas on that list as well.
Ephraim, what's your top five? Top five.
I don't think I can give you 5.
It's okay. You can give me 2 or 3. It's all right. If just this moment.
I think that's really difficult. I feel like, and mind you, like I'm you know, younger and whatnot.
You're all right.
You can say a young
He's gonna
artist.
pick
It's
someone
okay.
that's after the 80s.
Yeah.
This is about you.
Fair enough.
This is about you.
I think that, like, in terms of like impact in my life, for sure, Jay-Z.
Okay.
You know, unfortunately, he is not the same person he used to be, but Kanye West did have a really significant impact on my childhood. Like,
You still like him?
Graduation, Late Registration, like those albums like significantly impacted my childhood.
That makes it terrible.
And I think, you know, this might be, I think this will be controversial, but I think that, and I'm very biased, but I think that for me at least, I'd have to put Future on there.
Future, all right.
And like, you know, in terms of like being one of the like pioneers of the trap subgenre,
Okay.
like his longevity,
Mhm.
His ability to exist in different spaces and in other genres. Like, there's a good amount of like R&B tracks that Future has contributed to, and I think his ability to like experiment but while still maintaining his relevancy.
Yeah.
I think all of those things are worth noting, at least for me.
Okay. And last but not least, top 5. Or
Chuck-
you can do top 2, top 3.
Chuck D, Tupac, Mary J. Blige, Missy Elliott, and Kendrick Lamar.
Wait, say them again.
Chuck D, Tupac, Mary J. Blige, Missy Elliott, and Kendrick Lamar. But if you ask me who has had the most influence behind the scenes,
Okay.
so not outwardly performing, right?
Who would you say?
Then
I
I would
got a different list.
right.
Totally.
Then some of those people, yes, but then I would say Dr. Dre,
Yes.
behind the scenes.
Yes.
But this might be controversial. I would also say Pharrell,
I would say
Right?
that's true.
Also
Like-
Missy Elliott and several.
right?
Yeah.
And Queen Latifah, right? Because
And
she
Queen
shifted
Latifah,
behind,
oh my gosh.
right? And so it depends if you're
I already did
outwardly
that.
facing and performing or
Yes.
behind the scenes facilitating.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. And so we definitely could do in the future a top 5 producers, top 5 artists, top 5 groups, all the things. But is there any questions in the audience?
Oh, there's like several.
Too many.
Yeah, I'd like, Ms. Griffin, I'd like to ask you, Utah is pretty good at tolerating, not so great at accepting when it comes to the Black community. And so I ask you what role would hip hop play in moving the white establishment, which is whiter than the Osmond family Christmas in Norway. But would it help? Would it hurt? Or is it going to have any differences it involves?
Tell me your name, sir.
My name is Jay.
Jay. I'm totally okay with Rachel, but it's not Miss Griffin, it's Dr. Griffin. But I'm okay with Rachel. No, you're okay. I'm okay with Rachel. Your question is, what role do I think hip hop can play moving the white establishment in Utah?
Yes. If any, maybe.
I mean, I think that in this cultural moment, and I do want to be clear, we culturally here in the United States, we are re-litigating conversations that I literally thought we were past having in my lifetime.
Me too.
Right? Like I literally thought, well, I'm not going to go on the list, but I really did think that there were things that were resolved generations before I was born
Several.
that we are currently rehashing as a culture, not just in this state, but as a country.
Unbelievable.
I actually think right now that the white establishment in Utah, and I'll be more particular than that, the white people in positions of power in the context of the law, their problem is beyond hip hop because right now they cannot imagine people who look like me as fully human. full human beings who should have, and here I'm talking about gender as well, our full bodily autonomy, our full enactment of citizenship rights for those of us who are citizens. But even if we're not citizens, there is a degree of humanization that is being denied to people who are disenfranchised by nation state politics, whether that be by representation or law. Can hip hop help people in positions of power understand people who look like me as fully human? Yes. But people in positions of power have to be willing to listen. And right now, if you ask me, like, what is the one thing missing? Just one. If I could only name one thing that is missing from people in positions of power in this state and also on this campus, it is humility.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I would ask if you all do have some more questions, feel free to ask the panel after this. We can stay behind a little bit longer and then we can answer some questions. But with that, folks, can we give a round of applause for this panel? And then also, lastly, can we give a round of applause to 50 years of hip hop?
Hey!
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. We'll talk to you later.